Welcome back to the news, everyone, where we have got a pretty fun video today because Deathloop is out and it's ended up being a bit of a smash hit. Though, you're seeing this tweet, 10 out of 10 IGN, GameSpot, 5 out of 5 from a bunch of other publications, some 9s out of 10s. But you actually get a little bit of a different story if you look at some of the Metacritics, which, I mean, come on, it's Metacritic, you know, it's got its pros and its cons. But even Steam, which generally is pretty good when it comes to reviews, is at a 67 for PC. So this is a PlayStation smash hit that is currently being published by Xbox, but it does have a few issues. I've not actually jumped into it yet. I'm going to on my PS5 soon. But you, Matt, you have actually played a bunch of Deathloop.
Yes, I played a bunch of Deathloop on PS5, not PC, so a lot of the performance issues here I can't actually speak to, but some of them on PS5 are definitely not what I expect. And I have to say, although it appears that the user score on PS5 comes from, let's say, not related to the actual game itself, some of the user score stuff with console war stuff going on, obviously, because it's an Xbox game on PlayStation. Everyone's kind of confused and angry.
I suppose you do see all those 10 out of 10s and you think day one in Game Pass would be quite nice.
And honestly, I felt basically the same way because I had to pay full price for it on PS5 instead of, you know, probably in a year's time from now, I probably could have gotten it on Game Pass because that's when it'll expire. I imagine it'll be Game Pass day 365 or day 366. And it's interesting because I saw all of the reviews. That's why I bought it, right? I saw all the reviews and I, just kind of trusted them. I was also interested in the game. And I have to say, this might be another situation of the gaming press maybe not being the most accurate with what people will think about a game.
Yeah, so it seems like it is actually a very good game. It just might not be wall-to-wall 10 out of 10s.
10 certainly disagreeable.
Yeah, so and when we actually get into it, it's quite interesting because initially I just thought, okay, negative user scores because on Steam it has, it's performance issues with PC. That's what I sort of assumed. But we just recorded a podcast recently, and when you told me about the difficulty mode, and then I saw just a few of the clips of what the AI is like at loop stress 0. But then even that is a very interesting thing because those clips are being spread around the internet, not necessarily with full context of what loop stress actually is as a system, because this is a very strange game in that it has no difficulty settings. It's all dynamic and based off loop stress, which is a part of the game design, but we'll get into that. So, critically acclaimed, we have some iffy user scores. Now, it's for a few different reasons with the console stuff. However, on PC, we do have a little bit more of an issue where initially, well, no, there is stuttering going on. And people basically thought, stuttering. Okay, does it have de novo? It does have de novo. Great, de novo is causing stuttering. However, that actually might not be the case. Now, de novo, of course, it has legit screwed over many games. I believe it was like if Devil May Cry 5 performed way better. Like, people were actually buying the game, being annoyed at de novo, and then pirating the version because, of course, the pirated version didn't have de novo, which meant that it ran better. So a bit of a wild situation. But according to Alexander of Digital Foundry, there is no direct evidence that the stuttering is actually being caused by de novo. And then Dark Side of Gaming carried out their own tests and basically concluded that, after extensive testing, the stutters are somehow tied to frame rate, with frame rates between 60 and 90 having stuttery feeling, basically just feeling/movement, but at 120 FPS, it was way smoother. And that these issues have got nothing to do with frame rate limiters or the refresh rate. And said to also note that we're talking about the game's stuttering issues, not its mouse jittering issues, which are most likely issues with mouse polling rates that don't happen with a gamepad. So that's also quite interesting. And then, basically there's a bunch going on there. We don't know exactly what the problem is, but it does not seem to be de novo. That's at least based on what subject matter experts think, so I'm probably going to go with their opinion. And all of that being said, I'm sure you remember the launch state of Dishonored 2, which was not particularly fantastic, so this kind of thing has been known to happen with Arkane's games. Now, for this They have said that they're actively investigating the issue. So basically that's what's going on with the more sort of initial launch state based reviews. However, there is something deeper to go into when it comes to where these reviews could actually be coming out, because there are other memes being shared around the internet. Not just cute little ones about this incredibly high quality food with dynamic lighting and the mayonnaise. I mean, man, the seeds that are on that sub. Insanity. Looks incredible. That burger. You know what? It actually doesn't look delicious in just the right way. It looks a lot closer to the burger you actually get versus the promo photo. So I can appreciate that. However, there's another meme that's been floating around. So take a look at these clips right now. You're going to see some AI that is not particularly great. So the first thing I want to talk about is not some of their, let's just say, very, very hand-holdy just aspects of level design. It's the AI first, because that one's being memed on pretty damn heavily. People kind of being like, yeah, game of the year, 10 out of 10. Look at this AI. And seeing NPCs that seem brain dead beyond all reasonable belief in a modern video game. That's where I've got to throw it to you to explain this, Matt, because there is actually an explanation.
Yes. So, as far as I've played so far, I've made it, like, the furthest I've gotten is killing 3 visionaries in one loop so far. And that's when I realized, oh, hang on. This game isn't a nightmare. This isn't awful. Because I had noticed this when I was playing, and I saw a couple people tweet it as well, thinking, okay, well, maybe it was a little bit too good to be true. That is a 10 out of 10. Because the first thing I thought was, what do you mean I can just pick people off and then just duck behind a corner, wait 2 seconds and do it again? Because enemies at the beginning of the game are extremely easy and they're really stupid. Like, this behavior isn't like Outliers. This is stuff I've experienced on PS5. It is just completely brain dead. You're spending so much more time while you're playing figuring out, like, you can't, because what happened to me is I ignored it for a bit. And I was like, I'm sure this is like introductory stuff. This is literally just, it's bound to be just the first time I'm going through the game, or for each level I'll just get to explore a little bit, it'll be easy. And then it kept happening. And then I realized after I killed 2 visionaries, I got a pop-up saying loop stress. And I was like, okay, this is a new mechanic, sweet. So loop stress is basically the game's scaling difficulty, where whenever you kill a visionary in a loop, which is, because the plot of the game is to kill all 8 visionaries in the loop, that'll break the loop. At least that's the plot as it's presented to you at the start of the game. And every time you kill one of those, the loop stress goes up, which increases the difficulty of the enemies. It increases how smart they are, and a couple other different things that I'm not entirely sure of, but felt way different. And these problems very quickly go away. But the issue is that, so much of the game is based around information gathering and resource gathering that you'll want to do at a lower loop stress level, that you basically spend a substantial amount of the game dealing with these problems. Or, in the case of this, you clear an entire map like that. The map is just empty of enemies.
So it basically a way to play this game that's going to feel a bit more in line with the designer's intent.
Yeah.
Perhaps is to always go aggro.
Yeah.
Always try to push, because then you'll be killing more and more and more visionaries with each loop. The game's going to be getting progressively harder. Yeah. But then if you cannot quite pull that off because you haven't learnt the information, etc., then the difficulty is going to slack on you. But then the problem is we all have gamer brain. Yeah. So we're all, and especially if you play immersive sim games, like the amount of people who play Dishonored and just completely like 100% every single level, got every nook and cranny. Well, perhaps if you're playing the game like that, then you're going to feel like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to, at low loop stress, kind of exhaustively do everything that I can.
Yeah. You can mostly get away with that. And that's where I was really, really timid in this game initially. Because I picked it up the day it was out, and I played it for a couple hours. I think I played it for maybe around 6 to 8 hours so far. The game's apparently 12 to 16 hours long, so I imagine I'm actually, in the stretch where I could maybe just speed up and sort it out.
Yeah.
But I was playing it like you play a Thief, like a Dishonored 2, like a Deus Ex, anything like that, where I was playing it like an immersive sim. That said, I didn't know about the 0451 thing, which is just a little in-joke for immersive sim, so I'm not like super veteran of the genre. But I was playing in the way where you do want to find everything. And I was like, well, these levels are really small, actually. And they're really easy. Because what really switched it for me was I got a nail gun that is silent, but you can still one-shot things in the head from ages away, and there's tons of ammo. So you can just completely clear out anything you can see without them seeing you. And even then, they take so long to spot you that... And this is me playing on PS5, by the way. I'm not used to playing like shooters on console. I would usually play this on PC, but performance concerns kept me away from it. So like for a PC player, assuming the mouse jitter doesn't wreck you, the possibility of you, even if you're just okay at shooters, just one-shotting everything in the head silently forever is just entirely plausible. And it's really difficult to understand how this game got scores like this when this is so much of how you can play the game.
So
it's
of your
really insane.
So let's just say you played for 7 hours,
Yeah.
right? What's, how does that time slice up? Like, for how much of that were you timid on the game? And then, like, when did you actually, once you got the loop stress up and the enemies, they obviously have just variables they can tweak. Like, I imagine the cone of view, the the pickup time, like the noticing time.
Yep.
For NPCs. I assume they just crank all those things up as the loop stressing.
Yeah, so for a little bit of flavor, as far as I can remember from playing last night, there was a mansion in one of the levels that I had killed 3 visionaries. Well, okay, I killed one, and then I entered the mansion, and I had set it up so there were 2 visionaries in there, which, felt cool. It's why people like the game so much, because you can affect the world over the different time periods, but then all different time zones of the day, not over periods. But went in, killed 2 visionaries, had a pretty easy time getting in and getting to them, killed them both, and I couldn't get out. Every time I picked my head around a corner, I had waves come after me. And what I was expecting was the loop 0 or loop 1 kind of stress stuff go on, where you can just funnel them through a door. Like you can kill them all silently in ways that we've shown here, where you can just pick them off one by one. They don't react in time to be useful. But even if you are caught out, because like in Dishonored, once a bunch of guards come after you, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You're done for. Not in Deathloop. Not in Deathloop at all. Because they just are stupid in every way. They turn the corner, they don't spot you for a while, they take time to shoot, they don't hit you, and you can just clean them out and take their ammo repeatedly. So you can basically funnel an entire map through one door and just kill them with any weapon the other side, or even with a machete if you hand around the corner. So it's really, really awkward. And it was that experience when the loop stress went a bit higher after killing a couple of visionaries that I started to feel like the game actually had any difficulty. And that was only in the last hour of playtime. That was last night, like.
Wow, okay, right. So that's interesting. I then have to wonder, because the other side of this game we haven't talked about as much right now is it is seemingly a genuinely very interesting and very novel way of constructing a game. Where, like, as you were saying, setting up, because your goal is to basically break the time loop by killing the 8 visionaries. But you were able to, do one thing in one map in the first time period of the day, let's just say, that would cause one of the visionaries to appear for narrative reasons, etc. in another part, or like another map at another part of the day. So you could basically manipulate where these characters are and essentially use the fact that you're in a time loop and the information gathering and all of that stuff to set things up. So you're actually playing with a time loop in the way that's, like Star Trek time loop tradition.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you ever watched Groundhog Day and thought, wow, this is kind of like a video game, I wonder how that would work in a video game that actually works that way. It's basically that executed really well, except for all of these problems, which is where it gets really, really awkward to me, because it's so good otherwise. Narratively, the setup's kind of... I'm waiting for them to do something interesting in the narrative that I haven't reached yet, because there's... you play a game and you can just tell, I know something's going to happen or something's going to change. Something doesn't quite add up here.
Like the betrayal in Dishonored 1.
Yeah, so stuff like that's kind of in my head for something happening. But so far, it's like really well executed and really cerebral. That's what I think is great about it. Obviously, it like kind of handholds you by giving you general directions to go, and character dialogue saying, "Oh, well, I guess I should check this out next." So you get a marker and check it out. But it's really great in that way, And I can see how if you present it as a on a piece of paper, here's a structure for everything to work. I would go initially like at a pitch meeting, I'd go, that's a bit ambitious. How are you going to do that? So it's really well considered. I can see why journalists like it so much, why reviewers have had such a good time with it on that front, because it's really satisfying.
Yeah.
But for fans of immersive sims, I feel like this is going to completely miss the mark in a lot of ways.
So basically, it's like if you play this as a genre entry,
Yeah.
you're not and maybe you're the sort of player who, like me, was going around Deus Ex Human Revolution, in a bloodless run, right? Then maybe you're going to be creeping and crawling with these weird, boring enemies, and it's just not going to feel right.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'm glad that we've had all of our discussions about this game before I'm playing it, because I now know to play this game really fast and really aggressive, not pure stealth. More of a kind of like Predator play style, which seems to be the way to do this one.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's interesting, because obviously Arkane did a fantastic job with the Dishonored games. They know what makes an immersive sim. Deathloop has all of those elements really, really well, like in terms of how the world's built, how the levels are designed. People were kind of making fun of some of how on the nose some of the direction and stuff is.
Ah, yes, we can bring that up. The Garth Marenghi quote. I know level designers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
Yes. Yeah, so I can kind of understand that in the grander scheme of things, because everything's painted around the place, and it is, it's a high fidelity game now. If you don't have light or something to guide you, you'll be lost, because everything looks great.
Yeah.
In that sense. So I can kind of see that. It feels to me like this is an immersive sim designed to go against the tenets of the genre, in a sense, in the way that you'll play Dishonored and you'll explore the whole level, and then maybe in a second playthrough you'll come back and go for let's just go straight to the finish. And that's like a really cool replayability feature. But that is at the design level built into this game, because you come back time and time again with more information. There are things that are even basically mutually exclusive per loop and per time frame of the day. So as one example, to kind of make sure it's super clear, the way you play the game is you have 4 segments in a day, and there are 4 maps, but you need to kill 8 visionaries. So you need to make sure that because they're all in different places at different times of the day, you have to make sure everyone lines up in a way so you can kill at least 2 per time period, or whatever else, 3, whatever permutation of 3, 2, 1 you can get to actually kill all 8. So you have to keep trying things and try different things to make sure they line up. Like one example was, there's a note saying not to touch an item, and it was like a crank to turn a wheel. So I went and used that where I was clearly supposed to use it, and then I went back to that same place later in the day, and the character, the visionary in that thing, had reacted to that crank being moved and had changed some variables in the level, changed some stuff around. So it's not quite as simple as, it plays into having the loop stuff. So it's not just as simple as I know where everything is at all times. And then there was something else that needed the crank, but I couldn't use it now because I'd placed it somewhere else. So it has all of the replayability built into the actual game, as opposed to being something like a roguelite where it's just randomly different.
Yeah.
It is actually all designed really well. So I think they've done an exceptional job with a lot of it. It's just that the AI and difficulty issue, as well as some of the performance stuff, really, really hurts the experience overall. And if I had something to compare it to, I would actually suggest that maybe we'll see what happens in the coming days with it, but it reminds me of Aliens Colonial Marines when...
What? Oh.
Yeah, so
boy.
To qualify that, that game had some awful, awful AI that ruined how the game played overall.
I see.
And that was a typo in a settings file. Someone figured that out, modded it, and then realized that the AI was actually working really well. The game didn't ship like that. The game didn't ship like that. No one noticed it. This one typo. I think it was one wrong letter or one letter missing or something, but it completely ruined the game. So I feel like if they had turned up the difficulty largely here, it might work, but then I haven't seen what it's like at harder difficulties. That said, there's a lot of player freedom in games like this, and that means you can kind of wreck it, because a friend of mine finished it in 8 to 10 hours using one combination of things that he just found was stupid, which was the blink from Dishonored as well as some invisibility. He just went, done, figured everything out, got it all sorted in a way. versus me spending twice that length of time because I'm running around doing everything, playing it like I would a Dishonored, as opposed to playing it like it's this new innovative take on the genre, which it is, but it really doesn't land for a substantial... well, it seems it doesn't land for a lot of players, but reviewers kind of got caught up in what was really good about it and didn't communicate any of these, what I consider extremely glaring problems.
It is hard to reconcile a lot of what I'm hearing with the 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think if there was an overall read in this game, is it maybe that they were far too ambitious with the only thing, because they were ambitious in other things and they seem to have nailed those, but the dynamic difficulty tied into loop stress was just not the move, because as it turns out, for a whole bunch of your players, you're going to play the game in a certain playstyle, which in any other game that feels similar to this one is a valid playstyle, that it just, I mean, for you, it resulted in 6 hours of pretty weak experience, 1 hour of good experience. Whereas, put it this way, will I have a better experience going in, knowing all of this, and playing it as a sort of aggressive stealth exploration shooter, rather than a very, intricate's the wrong word, but slow-paced, experiencing slowly, exploring every nook and cranny? I'll have a better time if I just play it the former way.
Yeah, so the advice I would give, because I think it's a good game. Obviously, I haven't played through all of it, so I'm not quite sure how it gets later on. But from what I've seen, whenever a couple of visionaries are in the same map, it starts to interact really, really well. There's some really cool puzzles, really interesting stuff going on. And I think Arkane have done a genuinely fantastic job with most of it. But it's just this small couple of things that aren't communicated extremely well and feels like a little bit of a feeling of, we know who our fans are, we'll expect them to figure this out. So I think that playing it with the aggressive style and remembering that until you've killed visionaries, enemies basically might as well not exist.
Okay.
I think is a way to do it. So generally the case of balance issues really hurt the initial experience and can possibly hurt the experience unless you counter it, which is, I think, overall fair, but I would, I guess a numerical review doesn't quite have any, doesn't have the nuance you'd expect.
So basically, let's just say there is a patch. That patch adds difficulty, and it's almost just you start off, or your default loop stress, instead of 0, it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, or something.
Feels that way. Yeah.
At least, if that was a hot fix, do you feel like a lot of the current players would see this as it being an easy mode? And maybe it's not a case of making loop stress 8 harder, or loop stress 7 or whatever harder. It's just a case of raising the default so that initial experience is what people would want.
That is exactly what I think I would suggest, is it needs to be kind of normalized down a little bit, maybe with some spikes, something like that. But it definitely, it literally feels like you're playing the game on story mode.
Wow, okay.
Combine that with console auto aim being fairly strong, which seems a bit awkward, but obviously I haven't played much of these on console, so I don't know. But it's you'd basically, point in the rough direction, hold the left trigger, and hold the right trigger for a second, and they're gone. Unless you're using, well, actually, a great example. You could very quickly get a weapon that basically 3 taps anyone in the game at any point in time, because it's like a legendary weapon, but it points you towards it. So you solve a little puzzle, and now you've got this weapon that stays with you forever, and you can wreck everything. But everything else is really well considered. Balance, certainly an issue. One enemy dropped a silenced SMG that I can give a couple trinkets for longer max damage and further accuracy, and I can just snipe with an SMG across the map.
That seems okay, right. So I think with that, it's less of a buyer beware, unless it's maybe PC and you're going to be in that danger range of FPSs, and it's more a buyer actually try to play it like this because this is actually how it works well, and hopefully there is some sort of update to fix the difficulty issue.
I would hate nothing more than a game that's really, really well considered and well thought through in this way to suffer from a user score like this, because I don't think it's deserved. I feel like 88's probably around where I would generally maybe place the game if it continues to improve as I play through. It also depends on narrative twists, but I think like a lot of people, I'm genuinely weary of early reviews from a couple of critics, just because I think everyone's been burned by that before.
Yeah. And I think if your first impression of this game is AI, the sorts that are being spread around, which that's not just tiny details being blown up on social media. That does seem to actually be the base experience.
It is, yep.
So you see 10 out of 10, you get excited, your first experience is that, and suddenly the marketing has kind of betrayed the game, but also the game itself has what you could say is a design flaw that opens itself up to that sort of weakness in general.
Absolutely.
Damn. Well, there we go. That's that. I think that's the Deathloop situation explained. And tell you what, I hope you really find that useful, because my conversations with you have been really useful in this game, and I think I'm going to actually get to enjoy it properly. And I don't mean that in a way that is blaming the people who are playing the game. I mean that they designed a game where it's extremely easy to not enjoy it properly.
Yeah.
Or, to knock out the intended experience. So it seems like that is a design flaw, but probably a fixable one, given how loop stress works.
Yep.
Yeah, so there we go. Hope you found that useful, and we'll see you next time.